Hi, everybody, it's Shonna, and you're here for Stories with Shonna. And tonight I'm reading chapter 4 of The Barren Grounds. It's really good to see you. I'm glad you're back. This story is just about to start getting pretty interesting. Um, Before I start reading, I always like to get myself ready to receive the words, and that means I have to relax a little bit. So I'm not that cold tonight, so I've got this soft blanket I'm just going to put across my lap like this. And I have a cup of tea, mint, in a mug that's really special to me because my mom made it for me. She actually made that. She's very talented. She can make bowls and mugs and all kinds of things. And she didn't start doing it until she was retired, which means I think close to retired, which means that she was well into being an adult before she even started to learn how to make things like this. So I guess what I want to say to you is you can learn how to do anything in your life, no matter how old you are or how young you are. Anyway, that's a good cup of tea. I've got a nice soft blanket on my lap. I have you to keep me company. A nice cup of mint tea in a mug that my mom made for me. I feel calm in my body, and I'm really ready to start reading. I'm very, very pleased that you're here. I hope you've had a good week. And I'm just going to quickly just tell you where we left off. We left off with our two main characters, Morgan and her younger kind of foster brother, Eli. And they've just gone back to school. And we know that Morgan feels a little awkward at this school and is trying to make herself invisible. She doesn't feel comfortable around other people. Anyway, they're all at school now, and let's continue on. Chapter 4, The Barren Grounds. Lunch was Morgan's least favorite time of the day. Surrounded by the entire student body, she felt most isolated. Lunchtime can be a hard time if you don't feel comfortable at your school. Lunchtime and recess, eh? It's kind of like, where do I go? Everybody else can seem like they know where to be, and if you're not sure that you have anybody to sit with, or you don't feel safe or comfortable, that can be really challenging. Well, Morgan's feeling like that today. Kids sat in the same place every noon hour in easily definable groups. Jocks, who divided into subgroups depending on their respective sport. A jock is someone who defines themselves primarily by playing sports. And so they are often their friends. They hang out with other jocks or other people that are on the sports teams or play sports. Some that played basketball, hockey, volleyball, soccer. Or there were kids that were destined to take advanced classes in high school. Skaters, like skateboarders, who performed impossible tricks off the steps of the school until shooed away by whichever teacher caught them. There was a long list of cliques. Cliques are groups of kids. Some kids crossed over. Some kids did not, but everybody seemed to have somebody. Morgan sat in the same place each day, just like everybody else, but she always sat alone. She bought fries today and was stabbing at them while watching Eli, the only other kid in the room that was alone. He was wearing a Radiohead t-shirt and army green cargo pants with his hair in a tight braid. His shoulders were slumped. His head was slumped. His entire body was slumped, sitting on the floor. A plate of food that he'd bought from the cafeteria was resting by his feet untouched. She might have continued torturing her poor food, but just then a cool hand touched her own. Morgan looked up to see Emily standing by her. Remember, Emily is the one who's on the soccer team, and she has a locker near Morgan's. It was the first time Emily had approached Morgan away from their lockers. "Hey," Emily said. "Hey," Morgan said uncertainly. "Can I sit with you?" Emily asked. Morgan looked around the table as though she had to make space for Emily, and she didn't. Sure." Emily sat across from Morgan, placed her lunch bag on the table, and zipped it open. She pulled out a plastic container and opened it to reveal little containers of Caesar salad with chicken strips, a mandarin orange, and trail mix with sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, and raisins. That sounds like a good lunch. What do you like to have for lunch? My favorite lunch is a peanut butter sandwich, and I usually have a couple of cookies and an apple. Do you have something that you like to have most days? Although these French fries sound pretty good. If there were French fries available to me for lunch, I'd probably have those. Morgan shoved a forkful of fries into her mouth. What those fries ever do to you? Emily said. Morgan swallowed. Huh? You are annihilating your fries. Annihilating means like just destroying them. Emily reached over and picked up Morgan's plate for a moment to show her the state of her food. It wasn't pretty. Collateral damage, Morgan said. Emily had been chewing a slice of orange and almost choked on it. She patted at her chest while staring at Morgan confusedly, her face turning red. Are you okay? Morgan asked. Yeah, she caught her breath. I just didn't know you were funny. It wasn't that funny, Morgan said, looking down at her plate of mashed up fries. Seriously, Ghost? Emily poked Morgan's hand with her index finger to make Morgan look at her. What's going on with you? Why do you even want to sit here? Morgan asked. Earlier in the year, another kid, one of the skaters, had sat with her, acting all suspicious. He was talking to her, but glancing away, like every second he was looking away. And Morgan noticed a table full of his buddies snickering and watching them. He'd been put up to it by them. She guessed there was something funny about sitting with the new native kid. I float, Emily said. I'm a floater. And it was true, she was. She was one of those kids who could sit with several different kinds of other kids effortlessly. I saw you sitting here, looking kind of upset. You look kind of mad, like serial murdering your fries. And I thought, hey, this seems like a good idea. I guess I'm a risk taker. Well, I'm not going to stab you with my plastic fork. Don't worry, Morgan said. See, you are funny, Emily said, and Morgan smiled. But when she caught herself smiling, she stopped, like it was a dirty secret she didn't want out. So, Emily said, what are you mad about? What's up? It's about the poetry assignment, Morgan said. Mrs. Edwards didn't give me a mark because she said that I can do better. According to her, I have to redo it by tomorrow. Well, at least you didn't fail, right? Emily said. That doesn't sound like a defense for French fried homicide, but just maybe write a better poem. She said I have no heart, pretty much, Morgan said, and I wanted to scream at her. I want to tell her that her poetry book is lame, or something like that. But you didn't, right? Emily asked. No, but... And Morgan stabbed another fry. I always have this hot feeling in my chest. And you know when you've done something wrong and you feel so bad about what you did that you can't even say sorry about it? Okay, I'm confused, Emily said. You didn't, right? Well, it wouldn't have been the first time I blew up at somebody. Today, Morgan said, if I had. So you shouted at somebody, you wanted to shout at somebody else, and now you're beating yourself up about it? I think I need to reset the karmic balance of my life somehow. Her eyes rested on Eli again, and in her mind she flipped through all the pictures that he had drawn. He must have made some of them right where he was now. And while Eli said that she always looked angry at school, he always looked happy when he was drawing. Like her books, his art was an escape. Without it, no doubt he had to think about being away from home, being in this strange school, being in a strange house with an angry jerk-faced girl. Emily poked at Morgan. Hey, I'm still here, you know. We've got art next period, right? Morgan asked. Yeah, why? Because it's about time I did something nice today. So Morgan's talking about Eli having an escape through his art because there's a lot happening to Eli. He's been forced out of his family's home, and now he's in a foster home far away from the people that he knows and loves, and he uses his art to help him get through that, help him feel better. And Morgan, she uses her writing, right? Like, she wants to be a writer, so she writes a lot. And she uses that to help her understand how she's feeling about this terrible situation she finds herself in. She has a lot of feelings, a lot of anger. Is there anything that you do to help you with your feelings? Maybe you're going through something. Do you ever try writing or drawing or playing music or listening to music maybe? Maybe you run or do sports. Sometimes if you're going through something, having something to do to help you express it is good. Back to the story. A few minutes into art class with Mrs. Bignell demonstrating how oil painting was done, Morgan felt something hit the side of her arm. She decided to ignore the projectile, whatever it was. A projectile is something that flies through the air, projects through the air. It was a spitball. Ugh. A paper ball, any kind of ball. She kept her eyes forward and tried to be interested in how Mrs. Bignell was painting the petals of a flower. I bet Eli totally kicks butt in this class, Morgan thought. She stopped paying attention to the teacher and her impressive lilac and took inventory of the room. There had to be a drawing pad here somewhere, one that was comparable to Eli's. Another object hit her arm. Stop it, Morgan hissed at whoever was throwing things at her. Is everything okay, Morgan? Mrs. Bignell asked without turning her attention away from the lilac. Yeah, sorry, Morgan said. You're going to paint a beautiful lilac then, won't you? Mrs. Bignell asked. Yes, Mrs. Bignell. Perfect. Mrs. Bignell put the finishing touches on the petals she was painting and moved on to the next one. It was very likely that the kids would not get an opportunity to paint their own flowers today. Morgan looked for what had been thrown at her, and it was 2 neatly folded pieces of white paper that were scattered by her shoes. She looked around the class to see who could have thrown them, and her eyes met Emily's. When Emily nodded to the papers, Morgan picked them up and opened them. And the first one read, Hey, what's the plan? What do you have to do that's nice? Text me, 204-555-3474. That was the second one. Mrs. Bignell was still going strong, and Morgan slid her phone out of her pocket and texted Emily the following message. Kid living with me ruined drawing pad. I'm getting him a new one. Morgan sent the message and it made a swoosh sound, and she quickly put her phone on silent and closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes, Mrs. Bignell was standing over her, and she did not look impressed. Sit outside of class until it's over, Mrs. Bignell said, and the class all said, ooh. Mrs. Bignell, please, I won't make another sound, I promise. Sorry, Morgan, you've just disrupted this class twice today. You're done. I kept the class awake, Morgan thought, imagined herself saying that to the teacher, and her heat was simmering in her chest. But instead, she left the class and didn't say anything. In the hallway, she slammed her back against a locker and slid to the floor. Minutes later, she got a text. Emily, Plan B? She put a question mark. Morgan responded, I don't have one. Emily texted, the kid living with you, the First Nations kid's braids? Morgan texted back, yeah. Emily, how much do you want a drawing pad? Morgan texted, doesn't matter anymore. Morgan waited for Emily to respond. She saw the 3 dots in the gray circle, which meant that Emily was writing. The 3 dots seemed to be there for a long time, and finally Emily texted, what kind of drawing pad? And Morgan perked up. She wrote, really? Emily texted, yeah, the class could use more excitement. Morgan, in all caps, thank you. He wants one of the big ones. And Emily texted, I'm on it. Morgan waited. There were 45 minutes left in class, and she wished that she'd brought a book with her to kill the time. Instead, she imagined how Emily would steal the drawing pad. It became a fantasy adventure heist in her mind. She imagined that the class was full of snow, like the scene in her head that morning. Their classmates turned into rabid animals, and Emily had to fight her way through them to get the drawing pad, which was being guarded by the fiercest wolf of them all, Mrs. Big Now Wolf. No matter. Emily was armored with hockey equipment and a hockey stick with a blade that was an actual blade. Emily fought her way through the animals and then faced down the Big Now Wolf in the epic confrontation, eventually knocking it into the pit of despair where, if legends were true, the wolf would slowly disintegrate over thousands of years in a pool of watercolors. Emily stood triumphantly with the drawing pad raised above her head. Oh my gosh, Morgan has an incredibly good imagination, eh? She imagined all of that while she was sitting in the hallway, just waiting for class to be over. The bell rang. Morgan jerked to attention, thrust out of her daydream. She watched the line of students filtering out of class, waiting for Emily. It felt like an eternity until she appeared carrying a large drawing pad. Morgan shot into a standing position. You got it? I got it, Emily said. How? Morgan ran through the whole adventure sequence again. No, of course it hadn't been like that, but it could have been no less exciting. A heist all done under the cover of silence. Emily had undoubtedly managed to steal the drawing pad, get back to her desk, and conceal it. That seemed most impressive since it was so huge. All without alerting Mrs. Bignow. Honestly, I just asked her if I could have it. She said I could, Emily said. Megan's brow furrowed. What? Emily repeated what she'd said, word for word, but slower. And that's it? She just gave it to you? She just gave it to me. Emily snapped her fingers. Like that. Oh. Anyway, Emily handed Morgan the drawing pad. Here's the thing you wanted for the sake of karma and all that. It was the same size as the pad Eli's father had given him, just not the same brand. And Morgan flipped through the pages, checking to see if there were already drawings on the white pages. It's perfect. Really? I'm sorry if I'm being weird. I was just daydreaming. About a drawing pad? Something like that. They started off towards the next class, the last class of the day, which was math. Just to be clear, Emily said, the drawing pad is for, and I quote, she took out her phone and read the text Morgan had sent to her, the kid living with me. And by I mean you. Eli, Morgan said, that's his name. Is he your brother? Emily asked. Because that's cold if he is, calling him the kid living with me and all that. No, he's not my brother, Morgan said. He's a foster kid. Really? Did your mom get a foster kid that looked like you? Emily asked. Feel free not to answer if that's a stupid question. Actually, for sure, it's a stupid question. All Morgan really heard was mom, and everything else after that kind of blurred together. I don't have a mom. Emily cupped her mouth. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Your mom's? No, she's not dead. At least I don't think she is. Morgan closed her eyes. I don't care even if she is. I just don't have a mom, not since I was a baby. I'm a foster kid too. I'm sorry. Don't be, Morgan said. I'm not. And this? She held up the drawing pad in a desperate attempt to change the subject. This is awesome. Well, I have my moments. You can take all the credit. Thanks. Morgan still wasn't sure how Eli would react. It wasn't the drawing pad his father had given him, so would he even want it? But the drawing pad wasn't his father, and losing the drawing pad didn't mean he'd lost his father. Any more than losing the drawings meant that the stories he'd drawn stopped existing. Either way, she'd tried, and so much of it was thanks to Emily. Getting the drawing pad was Morgan's idea, but Emily was the one who'd actually got it. Why? Morgan thought for a moment longer, figuring out how to ask what she wanted to ask. Why are you being so nice to me? Emily didn't think long about her response. She just tilted her head and scrunched her eyebrows together and asked, why wouldn't I be? And then the bell rang. Math had always been hard for Morgan. Do you like math? Some people really do. But for Morgan, it was especially hard, especially algebra, which was what they were studying now. But Emily's response felt like a more complicated problem to solve. Still, Emily had sounded so matter-of-fact. Why wouldn't she be nice to Morgan? She asked it rhetorically. When someone asks something in a rhetorical question, it means that they're not asking for an answer. They already know the answer. Like, why wouldn't I be nice to you is a rhetorical question. She's not really looking for an answer. She's saying, of course I'm nice to you. Does that make sense? What is there about me for anybody to like, Morgan thought. What do I even like about myself? It felt like the world's hardest algebra question, and by the time class was over, she'd settled on the fact that Emily was being nice to her was more about a reflection of Emily than it was about her deserving it. I'm sorry to hear that Morgan doesn't think she deserves people being nice to her. That's sad to me, because everybody deserves to have people be kind to them. Eli was waiting for Morgan at the bottom of the steps out front of the school. Just like he always did at the end of the day. She broke off from the swarm of kids and stopped at the top of the stairs with a drawing pad hidden behind her back, ready to surprise him. He was sitting hunched over, just like in the lunchroom. Eli's had a bad day, eh? Morgan took the steps all the way down to the sidewalk and then turned to face Eli. Hey, Morgan said. Hey, Eli said. How was your day? Fine. I was thinking when we're home you might want to draw in my secret hiding place. I don't have anything to draw on, remember? He had yet to look up. Morgan took the drawing pad out from behind her back. You could draw, I could read, or work on my stupid poem, I guess. You'd like it up there, it's quiet. I said, and then Eli looked up and saw the drawing pad. Here, she handed it to him. He opened it, flipped through the pages as she had. It was as if he could already see all the drawings he was going to draw, all the fantastic stories that he'd created in his old pad. You got this for me? Yeah, she said. I got it for you. Eli stared at the drawing pad for quite a long time, and then he looked at her. Why would you do that? Morgan tilted her head, scrunched her eyebrows together, and asked, why wouldn't I? You know, it makes me think about, Morgan said the same thing that Emily said to her earlier, right? Why wouldn't I be nice to you? It's funny how somebody does something kind, and then it kind of has an energy of its own, right? Like someone holds the door open for you, and then maybe the next time you're at the door, you hold the door open for somebody. When someone's kind, it can be catchy and make other people want to be kind too. Thank you so much. That's the end of chapter 4. We're already on chapter 5, and the kids are heading back home. So we learned that Morgan is starting to have a relationship that seems to be like a pretty good, maybe a possible friendship at school, which is great. And poor Eli's beautiful sketchbook was ruined and hit by a car, but he got another one. And maybe, just maybe, Morgan is starting to care about Eli, and they might start to get close too. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. I hope you have a great week, and I'll be back to read chapter 5 of The Barren Grounds by David Robertson again soon. Have a great day. Oh, and remember, if you really like this book, just let me know, and I'll see if I can get you your own copy. Okay? Have a great night. Bye-bye.